Erased Destiny 2, The Knower. Chapter 12, Taste of War. Etien knelt in control of Earth in front of the large warehouse, trying to prevent it from collapsing. Stopped the river from breaking through the hastily formed flood barrier. Both were barely able to move from exhaustion. Meanwhile, the vampires were ransacking the homes of terrified people, rescuing children trapped in their rooms.
Send Ollivander, Breeze, warriors, seekers, earth mages, water mages. Anyone who comes along, healers. As soon as possible. Tyrdam turned into a ruin.
The result of one Noemi's decision, so that no one would find out what the woman was planning, what she was constructing in the city's underground. So many innocent inhabitants of Tyrdam had to die. Tears flowed from Etienne's eyes. A feeling of powerlessness, her own limitations, Noemi's lack of conscience, all of it weighed on Etienne like heavy boulders she was holding in the air. A piece of the wall fell off the neighboring building and flew straight at the girl kneeling on the pavement. She tried to catch it, but only slowed it down a little. She looked at the death falling on her with a slight smile on her face. It was not the first or the last time that something had killed her. Uzuma materialized right next to her. He pulled the girl by the arm, throwing her further away from the flying pile of stones.
Ice shield.
The partially materialized spell was enough to make the stones slide over it and hit the ground, sparing Etien and Uzuma.
Earth control. Withdraw. The support is coming.
Dressed in a white robe, Master of Ice held everything that was trying to collapse motionless. He glanced at the river, directing its waters back into its bed. Breeze lifted the tottering walls above Tyrdam with a tornado and then threw them into the desert. She shielded the rescued people, who had been brought out of the ruins, with her windy shield. Etien searched for someone to suck on to replenish her power reserves. Every corpse she touched with her scythe turned to dust. Cyril drew a map of the escape tunnels on the waterfront, the map that the seekers who had arrived tried to memorize exactly. More and more people appeared on the ruined quay. More troops of mages, seekers, warriors, and, above all, healers. The women immediately set to work on those injured in the fight against the elements, including Uma. However, they avoided Etien, as if they were frightened by the scythe held by the girl.
First, the river. Block the mouth with ice. The water mages push back the flood wave, so we can get to the ruins.
Breeze lifted nearby buildings to check if there were still people trapped underneath. To help her, Etien transformed into death. She scanned the rubble for red spots, the beating hearts.
3 people, 10 feet underground. There.
She pointed to the remains of a house.
The entrance to the tunnel is in that warehouse. All the basements in this part of the city are connected.
Breeze lifted the roof that was lying on the ground.
What did exactly happen here?
The old mine collapsed. I think 5 children are trapped between 2 walls. Over there.
She pointed to a house, of which little more than the ground floor remained. Ollivander used earth magic to move the rubble away and free the injured children.
How long can you maintain this form? I must admit that you are making our task much easier. I am surprised that you managed to transform at such a young age.
The closer you are to the spirit of the element, the easier it is to transform. And the duration depends on the degree of understanding of the essence of the magic practiced. In my case, it gives us a few hours. Even Aelin cannot help you as effectively. Breeze, lift the tower. This was the marketplace.
A woman emerged from among the broken stalls, surprised at her good fortune. Apart from torn clothing, she was unharmed. The vampires had entered the airborne structure to drag out several unconscious but still alive guards.
The people are stuck underwater. Judging by the position of their bodies, they are taking turns using the air bubble just below the ceiling of the basement of their house. Jargon, will you swim to them? Use ice to move the rubble and free them, then guide them to the surface.
Sure. You say they're stuck in this place?
He memorized the coordinates of the basement and jumped into the river. Cyril and Topes were trying to lift the beam that had crushed the crying woman's legs. Ollie shouted at the warriors to help Cyril. Involved in removing the debris, the men did not notice that someone else needed their support more.
The rest is dead. The closer to the epicenter, the worse it is. Have the Seekers search the collapsed areas on the other side of the river, as it is much better there, and the warriors coordinate the evacuation of the city. Otherwise, the survivors will be trampled to death at the gates. Meanwhile, we will take care of the mine.
Even though the word we did not include Jargon, Yume, Topes, and Cyril, the whole team followed material Etien. The vampires combed through the rubble they passed in search of survivors, but the golden-eyed girl just shook her head. She sensed no one else was still alive. The ground had caved in after Noemi's spell, leaving a large crevasse in Tyrdam's main street.
A terrible sight. Such a tragedy.
I assure you that the Crystal Palace will do its utmost to rebuild your homes. We will provide you with the necessary help. We will send a large team of healers and warriors.
I'd prefer a piece of sausage and few restorative potions. Sonja, take care of it, please.
A section of the city wall had collapsed, revealing sharp-leaved grass growing on the other side and stretches of sand blown in from the desert. The area around the mine had collapsed to the height of a multi-story building, engulfing the surrounding buildings and squares. Jargon asked if they should go back, because there was nothing left of the mine. He turned to his friend, who had been transformed into death, and jumped back in fright. He did not expect to see a ghostly body for the second time in half an hour.
A lot of people are trapped under us. Look around for a tunnel or an entrance to the mine. As a last resort, we will dig a new one, but the whole area seems to be subsiding. We might accidentally bury those we intend to help.
There was a hospital in this part of the mine, for the poorer inhabitants of the city. Formerly miners. If I remember correctly, the sick were lowered down that shaft.
I'd say it's safest to send the vampires. Once they reach the victims, we'll set up a portal for them.
Sonja snorted indignantly. Etien would have smiled if she had any facial muscles. She let out a quiet hiss, like a sigh. Everyone around her took advantage of her immortality, especially during dangerous missions. And she usually did not protest against such practices. She climbed into caves, threatening to collapse, squeezed through narrow tunnels, dived into a flooded library, and also into a swamp, because she could not die a second time.
The smoke won't penetrate everywhere. But I can. I'll go cross-country, the shortest way. I'll return to the body on the spot. See you later.
You're crazy. If the transformation ends earlier, you'll be suffocated by the landslide.
I'll go with you, the material you. The further we walk, the shorter the time you'll have to exist outside of your body.
Sonja said nothing, but stood next to her partner, making it clear that she would not let him go underground alone. Surprisingly, the pensive, seemingly absent Breeze also joined them. The woman stood on the ground, her lips twisted in disgust.
You can't transform a third time in the same day. It's impossible.
Why is that? I haven't heard of such a limitation. Of course, that would strain my body, making me sleep for a while, but that's all to it. Master of Ice, do not underestimate the death mages.
Using the scythe as a hook, Etien jumped into the mine shaft. Behind her was a laughing Uzuma. Sonja and Breeze followed soon after, looking more serious than excited.
Who is that girl?
Marigold, the local mage and healer. She doesn't age. She looks the same for as long as I can remember. So about 40 years.
She works in the court as a knower and teaches magic to children. Thanks to her, I passed all my exams.
Both Cyril and Ume tried to protect Etienne's secret. Nathan smiled. Their attitude was so charming. Ollivander was so slow that he didn't notice his mother getting married. There was no need to describe Marigold's life so detailed to make him believe she was not Etienne. He tried to convince Jargon to follow Etien, but it was not an easy task. So, to not waste more time, Nathan turned his eyes red and jumped into the hole. The Blue Angel looked around the collapsed mine. Marigold. For a moment, Ollivander thought it might be his mother. She knew Breeze, Aelin, Sonja, and Uzumat. She must have studied at the palace and got to know all the people there. Both he and Breeze had held their positions for a long time, Sonja and Uzumat almost as long as them. As she slid down the sloping wall, Etien recalled a marathon in the desert where one of the stages involved crossing through dark caves. Then she fell into an underground river and lost her leg as a result of hitting the rocks. This time, she hoped to avoid similar complications. Whenever she gained too much speed, she used the scythe as a brake.
We're about to crash into the wall.
Breeze lifted everyone into the air and lowered them gently onto a partially buried corridor. After a few steps, the passage became so narrow that they had to crawl to squeeze through. Sonja tried to pick up the trail, but could only feel the sand and dust. Ten's golden eyes were also unable to locate the victims.
We should go in this direction to keep the azimuth indicated by death.
Without waiting for an order, Breeze cleared away the piles of sand blocking the passage. She revealed a corridor carved into the rock, probably belonging to a disused salt mine. They walked in single file, in the formation determined by Etien. Underground, surrounded only by trusted people, most of whom were privy to her identity, the girl felt a little more at ease. She felt that Breeze had seen through her, or at least guessed the truth. Otherwise, she would not have gone underground of her own free will. Was she walking? Etien stopped halfway. Breeze walked on her own 2 feet instead of levitating above the ground. The sight was so unusual that the girl started to giggle. During their first meeting, 50 or more years earlier, Breeze had made fun of Etien for flying too slowly. And when she walked, she swayed from side to side like an overeaten animal.
End of the road. We won't get through this rubble.
Etien tapped the wall to find the thinnest spot. She thought she could hear noises on the other side, maybe screeches, maybe voices. Sonja approached the wall and gestured for everyone to be quiet. Besides, the sounds coming from behind the wall. The vampire was distracted by the shuffling in the corridor they had been walking in a moment ago. After listening for a few minutes, she said,
Dragon Lair. 5 to 7 adults and 12 to 15 young ones.
2 minutes, and it's over.
He stuck the blade into the thin wall, creating a hole big enough to go to the other side. The vampire was followed by his partner. Both were focused solely on eliminating obstacles to the Sovereign's plans. At first, Etien wanted to suggest putting the reptiles to sleep. However, her power reserves were so limited that she probably wouldn't be able to keep more than 3 winged creatures at bay. She looked at Jargon, who was standing behind Breeze's back, shuffling his shoes out of boredom. The boy showed a talent for life, but he certainly didn't know any spells of this domain. Until now, he had only used ice or water.
We're done.
Etien used her scythe to create a new passage, narrow and tight, with a crooked tip, but still wide enough for a slim person to fit through. Breeze squeezed through to the other side, and Etien immediately landed on her back. She slipped on the salt, which was abundant in the lizard's lair. Jargon, on the other hand, was stuck in the hole.
It's getting more and more annoying.
Etien sighed as Brice offered her a hand. When the vampires tried to pull the trapped boy through the icy hole, Etien showed Brice the meeting with Noemi.
I'll let you know.
Brice nodded. Her reticence had many advantages. Etien was sure that Brice, of all people, would not betray her.
Where to now? There's a hollow filled with water by that wall. A long tunnel that will lead us to the trapped people. Or at least close to them.
Uzuma showed his bitten face and neck.
The creatures living in the water have taken me for carrion. Too tight to fight. I can't even move my arm.
Actually, they weren't wrong. I'll swim first. If anything happens, I'll escape by teleportation.
He jumped into the basin before Etien stopped him. She wanted to ask Brice to use her tornado to draw out the water, but maybe that would take too long in a long, winding, narrow tunnel. She could have used them with her decent control and considerable power reserves, but the girl stayed up top, mainly because she had used up all that power. In the absence of better options, Etien followed Jargon. At first, she was groping her way along a narrow tunnel full of rocky bulges. Then she had more space for her arms. In complete darkness, she could not determine her own position. She wanted to conjure up light, but something grabbed her hand. Like two turquoise stones in the dark, her companion's eyes shone. The woman did not know when and from whom Jargon had learned the tricks of the Seekers. She was not interested in his life, especially since she'd returned to her own personality. Maybe Jargon trained with a pensioner like Martin? The mysterious aquatic creatures did not bother them, so the young people explored the large underwater cave in peace. They found many branches, but none of them was wide enough for them to fit in. In gratitude for the entire mission and this last swim in the dark, Etien hugged Jargon. She changed form once more, located the trapped people and headed towards them. As death, she moved extremely slowly, so Jargon had time to return to the team before she reached her destination. The sudden appearance of death did not please any of the hospital patients. On the contrary, people started screaming, crying, begging for mercy. Unaccustomed to such reactions, Etien hurried back to her body.
We'll get you out in a minute.
No one was listening to her. The panic she had caused by just appearing made it impossible to communicate with anyone. The girl felt dizzy. She vomited on her feet, collapsed to the ground and stared blankly at the wall in front of her. She hoped the terrified people wouldn't trample her. Next to her appeared Ollivander's portal. Someone picked the girl up and carried her out of the tunnel into the daylight.
You shouldn't take such risks. I'll take you to the palace.
No need. Give me something bitter to drink. That's enough.
I'll take care of her. Don't wait for us.
Uzuma took Etien from Ollivander and disappeared. Meanwhile, Topaz, Cyril, and Brice were involved in carrying out the sick, fortunately not battered by the earthquake. Jargon sat on a large round stone, deep in thought. Etien gave him a hug, a sincere, heartfelt hug. Maybe he had a chance with her. The vampire and the former sovereign appeared in the ruined cellar. They hadn't left Tyrdam. They had only moved a few streets away. A piece of the broken counter, that was all that was left of the tavern. Most of the barrels were lying on the ground, smashed to pieces, but a few had survived. And it was from inspecting the surviving barrels that Uzuma began their stay in the former tavern. Then he took care of the tankards and the tray. He even put on a dirty green apron. Amused by the sight of the man serving her, Etien forgot about her ailments. She tasted the wormwood-flavored wine and said,
Yuck, that's bitter. Perfect. Thank you. Zuzu called Sonja to the palace, so we have few hours without her harassment. How can you stand her behavior?
It is getting better with every passing day. Really. I know that period of time is difficult for vampires, so I am patient with her. Soon she should return to the old self, whom I liked. What are you planning to do with Noemi? Are you going back to Sintra?
For a while. Noemi won't strike right away. She lost her hideout, some part of her army, and raised funds, so she needs some time to adjust her plans as well.
The prospect of months of boredom did not appeal to the vampire, so he straddled a chair right next to his favorite lady to persuade her to change her strategy. However, she anticipated his statement.
That doesn't mean we won't make our moves. Considering how few troops I have now, you have no competition. It worries me a little. What will Velinard say if the excess work wears out his best warrior?
At least I'll die happy. The castle routine would kill me sooner. But now, I'm back on the trail. You can't imagine how grateful I am to you.
I can. You were ready to start an inner world war because you had nothing better to do. Although I'm sure Sonja is largely to blame for that incident.
Uzumayat did not answer. He put his head down because for a young vampire, attacking a group of unarmed mortals was the same as a death sentence. He did not blame her for losing her temper. However, that time, the consequences could mean the end of them all.
It was a strange world. Nothing worked there the way it should. Least of all, the magic.
I remember. I shone instead of hiding in the darkness, and the spell of magical creature made me float in the air. Although I don't consider being there as the worst thing that has ever happened to me. It is not in the worst 10 even.
I'm relieved. So what are your plans?
While the ninth lady pondered her next move, Uzumayat emptied the cellar of the undamaged bottles. He didn't take any luggage with him, so he had free hands to take as much wine as he could carry.